Good evening, everybody. Tonight, Halacha and Tanya. Last time we were learning the dinam of meat and milk together. I mean, it's forbidden the amount of time you have to wait and the various different things that come up. I just want to give you an example of what happened. Today was a lot of kitchen halacha questions, but three of them are interesting questions. Number one, in a school, they have this deep fryer for French fries, and it's always kept parve. It's kept parve oil for parve French fries. Today, by mistake, somebody fried schnitzel in that oil, and later on, without changing the oil, they fried French fries. Question is, how long do they have to wait after the French fries to be able to eat meat? To eat dairy. The answer is 6 hours. Because when you fry the schnitzel in the oil actually gets the taste of the schnitzel. So the oil is really fleshig. Then later when you cook French fries in that same oil, the French fries are mamish, fleshik. You have to wait actually 6 hours until you're able to eat the milk. Another interesting thing that happened today, somebody by mistake, or I don't know who did it, but they put their Milchik, their dairy blender, in a meat dishwasher with meat dishes. Okay. So now the issue is, I'm just telling you generalization. I'm not saying, because every case, one slight detail will change the halacha tremendously. But basically, number one, you have to know if the meat dishes were washed before they were put in, rinsed, which they were in that case. Secondly, the blender was also washed. Now the blender is not, in that case, wasn't real dairy. It was always washed with dairy equipment and so on. Anyway, so the bottom line of that case was I told her she should pour boiling hot water all over the blender, and everything else in the oven wouldn't be a problem. In the dishwasher, it wouldn't be a problem. But these things happen, by the way. You find a dairy spoon in the fleshig dishwasher, vice versa. These things always come up in the house, especially, which is another thing I don't understand how people do it. And that is, people have cutlery with similar patterns for meat and dairy, or similar plates. Many people have the same plate. I get this often. The same cutlery, the same plates for milchiks and fleshiks, and they always keep them separate, they say. But the bottom line is, that's impossible. If they look different, people at least know there's a difference. This is milk, this is meat. If they look the same, you can't have the same knives that look exactly alike for dairy and meat. Of course, they're going to get mixed up and you're going to have big questions. Another issue that, again, these are all from today, that came out is somebody takes a fleshik pot with fleshiks in it, and they put it on a dairy blender and a dairy burner. They took a meat pot, put it on a dairy burner. So there's a very interesting halacha, which is, again, I'm not pasking on this class now because every case is different. But there's a din in halacha that in order for vessel to absorb from vessel, there has to be liquid between them. In other words, technically, you don't do this, but technically, if somebody is cooking meat in a pot and somebody's cooking dairy in a pot, and the two pots happen to touch each other from the outside, nothing spilled, they're touching each other from the outside, and there is no moisture, there's no liquid between the two pots, halachically, the pots don't become treif. Because according to halacha, in hot water processing, it can, one absorbs from the next only with liquid. So it wouldn't be a problem, especially let's say you put a meat pot on a dairy burner. So if the bottom of the pot is dry, so then it's not a problem. I mean, I'm not saying you should do it, you shouldn't do it. But if it happens, it's not so terrible. Okay, let's move on in the dinim of like we said, my cholos asuris, and what?
Well, sometimes this happens where, let's say you have a hot soup in a plastic container, like you put it in there, and let's say you have something milchik that's also in a plastic, like it could be egg salad or tuna or whatever.
They're not milchik.
But let's say the soup is fleshik.
Yeah.
But it's hot, really hot, and it's in that plastic, right? And you put it in the extra in a plastic, container, and it's touching the plastic of another container. Does that transfer over?
I told you, if there's no moisture, it doesn't transfer over.
So even if it's hot, and what if the other one was hot?
Even if they're both hot, but they're both dry, when the two pans or containers, whatever, touch each other, then it's not something to do. But if it happened, it's not a problem in halacha.
Okay.
Rabbi Shusterman,
What
happened with the Milchik fryer that you said talking about the Milchik fryer?
Milchik fryer?
Yeah, you said at the school there was a Milchik fryer and they put.
No, I didn't say it was a Milchik fryer. I said it was parva oil. Somebody made schnitzel that day.
Yeah.
So then the oil became fleshik.
What about the kalim?
Not kalim, and then somebody made French fries in that oil.
Yeah.
So what I said was the French fries become fleshik that you have to wait 6 hours. And the fryer became fleshiks. Okay. Next. Okay, so now there's a din like this, and this is very important. This I got this week a few times already, believe it or not. Certain things, when you're sending through a non-Jew, needs to have what's called a double seal. When you're sending food through a non-Jew, the container must have a double seal. Now, what does it mean, a double seal? You have, let's say, the to-go styrofoam containers. That's one seal. And then if you seal it with the tape of the hashgacha or the restaurant, that's a double seal. For instance, the same thing with the wine. When you have a wine, kosher wine, so you have, whether it's a cork or through the cover on top, the din is that then they have another seal around it. That is called a double seal. Now, when restaurants deliver meat, or a butcher store delivers meat to you, okay, you order meat from a grocery store, and they send it, they deliver it. Or a restaurant, you order takeout, they send it, they bring the pizza, they bring the meat or whatever it is, and they send it with a non-Jew. The din is it has to be double sealed, meaning it has to be in one container plus another seal that if they would open it, you would know they opened it. Otherwise, it's extremely questionable if you're allowed to eat that pizza or meat or the food they sent from the restaurant. If it's cheese, fish, meat, those things need a double seal. And in fact, somebody called me this week. They got somebody, I don't even think it was local, a pizza store delivered pizza. And they have the tape on the outside. When it came to the person, the tape was open. It was open. It wasn't even closed. So he called me up, am I allowed to eat the pizza? So I said to them, you need to call the pizza store and find out exactly how they sent it. And what happened over there was they actually took a picture of the pizza and they sent it to the store, the kosher from store. and the person testified, yes, that's exactly the pizza that I sent, so then it's kosher. But otherwise, you get meat, or I'll give you an example. You get a package of meat, yeah? It comes in a white shopping bag. You know what the stores give you, the plastic bags. And that bag is not sealed. And inside, you just have, like, when you buy the meat in the store, it's just cellophane wrapped. And then they put it into a bag, and the bag is not sealed, stapled or taped or something. And they bring it to your house. According to Halacha, you're not allowed to eat it. You have to find out. You have to find out how the store sent it with the non-Jew. Now, if they send it with a Jew who's from, there's not an issue with it. Now, somebody just asked, what's the story with the wine in the non-mavushal wine? So again, when the non-mavushal wine in the bottles is actually double sealed, you either have, let's say, the cork is one seal, and then you have the plastic around it. That is the double seal, or a cap with the tape around it. That is a double seal. So even if it's not mavushal and a non-Jew touches the wine, it's not a problem. But I'm saying it's very important when you send a butcher, a restaurant, pizza store, sends things through a non-Jew, you need to make sure it's double sealed.
It doesn't make a difference if it's raw or cooked. Right?
It doesn't make a difference if it's raw or cooked. The only difference is if it's cooked. But the Eved, if you call up the restaurant and they tell you exactly how it was made and how it was sent, and it fits exactly the description, then you can be lenient. But that's not the way it should be done. Okay.
Shusterman,
What?
the butcher, if the meat market sends you raw meat and it only has cellophane on it, and it comes in a bag.
Yeah, but if the bag is not sealed, it's
Right.
no good.
Thank you.
Sealed either with a staple or a tape around it, that if somebody opened it, you would be able to tell if it was or not.
What if I, as a private person, send food to a Yid, but there is a goy that picks up this food? Do I have to double seal it?
Yes. If you, let's say, making, somebody had a baby and you're making dinner for them, let's say, okay?
Yes.
And again, it's either fish, cheese, meat, wine, okay? Now, if let's say they have their housekeeper coming to pick it up or whatever,
Yes.
you have to make sure that it's double sealed, meaning you could put it into one bag and then into a second bag, and the second bag is stapled.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's fine. But otherwise, it's big shaila. It's called basish in the Stam Ynam. It's meat that was concealed from a Jew's eye. We're afraid somebody exchanged it for non-kosher meat or non-kosher fish or non-kosher cheese or things like that. So people have to be very, very careful.
The wine makes a difference if it's mavushal or not.
If it's not mavushal and it's kosher, then it doesn't have to be double sealed.
If it's not mavushal.
If it's not mavushal, it must be double sealed.
Uh-huh.
If it's mavushal, then it doesn't have to be double sealed. Okay, next.
It's just cheese, meat, fish, and what else?
Wine.
Wine.
Okay, another din is like this. It's forbidden to make milchik bread or fleshik bread, which means like this. If somebody makes bread using milk, it's forbidden to eat. The bread is forbidden to eat, even if you want to eat it by itself, unless it's shaped differently than regular bread. It's a whole different shape that people see it's different, and it's made a small amount that you're only going to be eating at this meal. Well, what's the problem over here? bread is something that people eat with meat, people eat it with dairy. It's something people usually assume it's parv. If you're going to make a milchik of bread and you're going to leave it in your house, somebody's going to think it's parv of bread. They're going to eat it with dairy. Or in halacha, it's a weird thing. But if somebody made dough with schmaltz, with animal fats.
Chicken fat.
Huh?
It's chicken fat.
Chicken fat, animal fat could be it, it doesn't matter really. Same thing. Or if somebody uses fleshy gravy, whatever, I don't think whatever it tastes like. But hypothetically, if somebody would use fleshka gravy as water in the bread instead of water, they'll use that. It's forbidden to eat, and unless if it's made in this unique shape, or you have a very small amount of it, and you make sure to eat it up right away. Otherwise, milchik bread is trait, fleshy bread is trait. That's what it's.
Rabbi,
you're not allowed to eat it.
Rabbi, what if someone makes like French toast with milk and they use it in the batter?
I understand. That's a very good question because a lot of people make French toast using milk. So then it's not an issue because when you're making it, you see right away it's different. Okay. It's not a piece of bread somebody's going to take the French toast and eat it with the meat sandwich. I mean, just people see right away that it's French toast, which is made with milk. I'm talking about a plain bread that looks like bread, shaped like bread, or challah, it doesn't matter, or a roll or whatever it is, that you can't make fleshik or milk.
Okay, I make banana bread and it's made with milk, but we only eat it for breakfast. Is that permissible?
Only if it's a small amount that you eat up, or you make it in a different shape than normal bread is.
I usually don't. I just put it in a loaf pan. But
Okay,
what I
so
do,
saying that you should change it.
so that it's dairy, I put it in the plastic bags and I mark on the bag dairy.
If you mark it dairy, then it's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next. Okay. I'm not getting into the bug story with the fruits and vegetables. Just want to say a few general things. According to Halacha, bugs that are not visible to the naked eye in Halacha is not an issue. In other words, there were times they were finding little mamish tiny worms or bugs in the head of fish, and it was not, you were only able to see it with a microscope or magnifying glass. Or for instance, there was a time that they were saying there's bugs in the water. Now, halachically, if you look at the water and you don't see the bugs within the naked eye, halachically, it's not an issue because Torah is given to people. With people, it's what you don't see is not there. So, but people have to be careful when they do things. There was once in New York many years ago. I didn't even know if they still do it. They were saying that you can't drink the city water in New York because there were bugs and things in it, and therefore they made everybody put a filtering system in the water to filter out the bugs. That's fine. It's wonderful. The only problem with that, personally, I think that you're not allowed to use that filtering system on Shabbos, because if you're not allowed to drink the water without filtering it, then filtering it, you're not allowed to drink it either. Because then you're buried on Shabbos. You're separating bad from good, which is forbidden on Shabbos. And they say another proof of this, the whole thing, b'chlal. Everybody knows that there's, in the air, there's little, I don't know if you call them bugs or whatever you call these tiny things floating around, germs even.
They're called gnats.
Yeah, whatever. So when you breathe, when you breathe, so then, you're breathing that too. You're breathing germs. There's also living things. So again, anything which is not, and by the way, another interesting halacha. What happens if you want to check a fruit for bugs? Let's see, you want to open up a peach and you want to make sure there's no worm inside the peach or apple, whatever it is. If you're cutting open, normally we learned that it's preferred to make a bracha on something complete. But if you're going to check for worms and bugs, let's say inside the fruit, then you can't make a bracha until after you open it up and check it. Because if you're going to make a bracha when it's whole, and then you're going to open it up and see there's bugs in there or worms in there, then you're not going to be able to eat it. So you're making a bracha in vain. So then you have no choice but to cut it open first and then check it out to see what the story is. Okay, next. Okay. Another interesting halacha is like this. Basically, the bottom line of it is you're not allowed to go Rav shopping. You know, yes, good Rav Shaila. He says no. And you say, okay, you know, forget it. I'll ask somebody else. It's called Rav shopping to try to get, you know, a leniency for somebody. So the din in halacha is like this. It's a din in Shulchan Aruch that if you ask the shaila to a Rav and he forbids it, you're not allowed to ask another Rav unless if you tell the second Rav that I asked another Rav and he told me no. He told me it's not good. Then you're allowed to. But otherwise, if you're asking a Rav a shaila and you don't like what he answered and you don't say anything, you just go ask a different Rav and the other Rav will perhaps tell you it's good, that is forbidden halachically to do because the Rav told you no, it's already forbidden for you. Now, a lot of times, a Rav doesn't want to be lenient. He doesn't want to be strict. So a lot of times the Rav will tell you, ask somebody else. In other words, the Rav feels he's going to have to say no. If push comes to shove, this Rav is going to have to say no. And he knows there are other Rabbanim that are more lenient. So then a Rav many times does this, by the way. They'll say you have permission to ask a different Rav. Or they'll tell you straight ahead to ask a different Rav. So, but that's things that are very practical also, that people need to understand that once it's paskind, it's paskind. Okay, next dinim here in Kitzur is the dinim of what's called Stam Ynam. Let me explain what Stam Ynam is. Anything poured or used for idol worshiping is biblically forbidden to eat or to benefit from. It's idol worshiping. Aveda Zara is not only usher to eat, it's usher to benefit. Anything that's connected to idol worshiping that people worship is biblically forbidden.
Who knows this?
Now, if somebody poured in the olden times, people used to pour wine for Aveda Zara, just like they poured wine on the Mizbeach. People and the idol worshippers in the olden time would pour wine for the idols. That was called Yayin Nesech. Nesech means poured. Now, wine that was poured for idol worshiping, again, is biblically forbidden. You cannot eat it, you cannot benefit from it, and so on and so forth. Later on, the Chachamim took it a step further. And they said something called Stam Ynam means regular wine, which is not under Jewish supervision, or made by a non-Jew, you also cannot drink it. Most of the times, it's also forbidden to benefit from. It's also forbidden to benefit from. Why did the Chachamim make that? Why did they institute that? Because the Gemara says, Gadol legima shehi mekareves. Drinking, wine drinking, brings people closer together. The Chachamim didn't want assimilation between Jews and non-Jews. and wine is something that brings people to assimilate. The Chachamim said any wine which was touched by a non-Jew, and I'm telling the general rule and then the details of it. Any wine which is touched by a non-Jew, you're not allowed to drink, and many times it's forbidden to benefit from. Now, what does it mean, wine that was touched by a non-Jew? So number one, we learned just before, if the wine is double sealed, it doesn't matter if a non-Jew touches it, because it's a double seal. Once the wine is open and it's not mavushal, which I'll explain in a second what that means, it's not mavushal, then if a non-Jew touches the bottle, you're not allowed to drink the bottle, with the wine in the bottle. And many times you cannot even benefit from the wine, which means in a practical case, somebody opens up an expensive bottle of wine and they didn't finish it, but it's not mavushal, it's not cooked wine. And your housekeeper is cleaning around the area where you have the wine, and she picks up the wine, touches it, and then cleans underneath it and put it back, you're not allowed to drink that wine, because she touched a non-mavushal open bottle of wine.
Rabbi, is it true that this applies to a Jew who's not Shomer Shabbos also?
I'll come to that in a second. Now, if the wine is mavushal, or again, the wine is double sealed, it's not a problem. Why did the Chachamim not go so far to forbid wine that's mavushal? Because wine that's cooked is not a very high grade of wine. Like for instance, on the Mizbeach, they were not allowed to use cooked wine. But Yid, on the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash, they were only able to use wine that was not cooked. Why? Because cooked wine loses its prominence. So therefore, the Chachamim said, if the wine is mavushal, you know what? A guy, even if a guy touches it, you could drink it. Person who's not Shomer Shabbos, so today, like we learned in previous classes, they don't really have a din of a guy. So therefore, many people are lenient that if it's a person that doesn't know better and therefore they're not Shomer Shabbos, they would allow them to drink the wine. Now, according to Kabbalah, that this halachically is only if the guy touches an open bottle of non-mavushal wine. If a guy sees the wine, meaning it's an open bottle of non-mavushal wine, and the guy sees it, but he doesn't touch it. So according to Kabbalah, you don't make Kiddush or Havdalah over it, but you're allowed to drink it. And that's a Kabbalah thing, it's not Halacha. According to Halacha, if a guy sees the wine, you're allowed to drink it, even if it's non-mavushal and an open bottle. But if the guy sees the wine, then according to Kabbalah, you could drink it, you just don't make Kiddush, Havdalah, things like that over the wine. Mitzvah Shem is late, I want to go to Tanya, but in Mitzvah Shem next week, we will discuss what constitutes cooked wine. What makes wine cooked? And we'll discuss next week in Mitzvah Shem if pasteurized wine is considered cooked or not. And we'll leave that for next week. And let's go to Tanya.